Fellow film fans, what up? It's your boy Tay, and this is Tay Talks Talkies. Dinosaurs, future guns, badass protagonist. No, I'm not talking about Turok, the game from like 25 years ago. I'm talking about 65, Sony's latest film that just came out March 10th. It's starring Adam Driver, my man Kylo Ren, and he can do no wrong. I have to say, every single role that Adam Driver is in, he completely acquiesces to it and becomes that person, and he nails it every time, and I love watching this guy no matter what the movie is. So the movie was directed and written by the same two guys, Scott Beck and Brian Woods. These are the two guys that are responsible for The Quiet Place, which is actually a really quality horror sci-fi film. Here they take their crack at dinosaurs and shooting, and it's a pretty good crack. I think it's one of the better sci-fi films I've seen in recent history. Based solely on the premise alone, I think the premise is really the core of what this movie gives. It's a really interesting premise. I don't want to spoil anything, but essentially it's a person that lands on a planet and there's dinosaur creatures and he has to cope with that, and there is really strong stakes here. There are really emotional scenes. I think the bond that we established in the very first scene between the character and someone related to him, it is pretty heartfelt and it feels pretty heavy throughout the film. And come on, how can you not like dinosaurs, Adam Driver, and shooting with future guns? It's just a recipe that you cannot miss with. At 93 minutes, I think it's a pretty well self-contained story. A lot of films these days are twice that length, 3 hours long, really often, honestly, and that's a lot of time. So I don't like my films to be too short where I feel like it's missing some meat of the actual story, and that could be the case here. It felt like there could have been a couple more scenes injected. I get it's probably an expensive film to make, but it seemed like they could have probably injected a couple more scenes to make us more endeared to the main characters, to make us more invested in the world they're building. But I think they still did a pretty good job with the 93-minute runtime that they have. His little co-star in the film, Ariana Greenblatt, she did really well. Was she the best child actor I've ever seen? No, but she was pretty good. I think she brought heart. She doesn't speak English in the movie, so she's communicating a lot with facial expressions, similar to the role that the little girl had in Creed, funny enough, which just came out last week. And she did a really good job emoting a lot of emotions through the film. Plus, I'm not going to be hypercritical of a child actress because it's a tough task, man. I think she's like 10 years old or something, and that's a lot of stuff she had to do in this movie. She had a lot of action, a lot of stuff to do, and she had to display a lot of heart and a lot of emotion. And I think the film itself had more heart than I thought it would. There are some pretty emotional scenes. And is it the most inventive film? No. The premise is a pretty cool premise. It's really similar to Turok, like I mentioned in the intro. In Turok, I think I remember it correctly, it's a guy who's a time traveler and he ends up in a dinosaur world and he has to fight dinosaurs with these crazy weapons. But yeah, it's pretty similar, and I guarantee Scott Beck and Brian Woods played Turok growing up. I'm not sure what people are expecting out of this movie. Obviously, I can always really expect more. For the case of a movie like Cocaine Bear, yeah, there's a lot to critique there. But for a movie like this, I felt like they executed everything pretty well on a really small budget. It's a really small budget, honestly, when we compare it to a lot of modern films. It's $45 million they had to work with, and there's a lot of CGI. There's a lot of dinosaurs. I was trying to spot if I saw any practical dinosaur effects going on, and maybe here and there, but I really didn't see any. So it's a lot of CGI artists they had to contract, and I'm sure that was the brunt of the expense. Adam Driver, I'm sure he fetched a couple mil. My man is a great actor. And yeah, there's not really any other actors in the movie, just Ariana Greenblatt, and I'm sure she wasn't too much. So they had to really try to make a delicious meal out of not the greatest ingredients, and I think they did a pretty darn good job. I think it's an entertaining movie, and for me, the number one purpose of movies is to be entertained. Obviously, I want to absorb some sort of message. I want themes that are not heavily shoved in my face, but are really tastefully spread throughout the story. I want that type of thing in my movie. I don't want to be spoon-fed a message, but when a movie has something to say, that's very important. But the number one most important thing, let's not lose sight, is that we enjoy our experience through a movie. And I thought this was a pretty enjoyable movie. It kept me on the edge of my seat. There was some really tricky camera work going on. They have some cool little techniques they did to really build suspense, and I thought the little things, the technology that they put around the ship, the technology Adam Driver is utilizing when on this world, I thought it was all pretty unique, pretty well done. There are nods to other movies. You could definitely tell there's nods to Jurassic Park heavily. Velociraptor claws, T-Rex eyes, those types of things, paying homage to a movie that has inspired everybody. It's a really cool movie. It's a really enjoyable movie, especially if you're into sci-fi, especially if you're into dinosaurs, especially if you're into futuristic weapons, which is a really niche thing, but hey, there's people that are into everything. Go on Reddit, you'll find that out. But yeah, I'm not sure why there's a lot of negative reviews about this movie. I think people have to understand that movies have different categories. There's movies that sole purpose are dramatic effect. This movie had dramatic effect for sure, but that's not going to be the meat of the story here. The meat of the story is dinosaurs attacking them. But they actually weaved a lot of heart, a lot of emotion into that, where a lot of other sci-fi movies of a similar cloth did not do that. So I think it's pretty impressive. $45 million is a small budget, and to be hypercritical of this movie in a world where we have these MCU movies and things like that that are having 5 times that budget and not telling nearly as heartfelt of a story as this one told, well, I think people need to open their eyes a little more and realize what movies are. It's supposed to be fun. There's different categories of movies. This is the type of movie that's just supposed to be fun. There is heart in it, so it has a little bit of everything. There's payoffs, and I really felt like it was a story that the writers cared about. Yeah, it could have been, obviously, if it was longer and they had more money, I think they could have made a richer story, but they did a really good job with what they had to work with, and I think you should check out 65. I think it's worth checking out in theaters. I think it's a fun time, and it's only going to take up 2 hours of your day instead of these other movies where, with trailers included, you're in the theater for freaking 3.5 hours, okay? So take everything with a grain of salt when it comes to art. At the end of the day, it's the filmmaker's vision. The reason this movie didn't get a huge budget is because these guys only have The Quiet Place under their belt. If it was a Christopher Nolan, he would have a bunch of money to work with. But these guys, they made a really quality film on $45 million, a really modest budget in the modern era. So support that. Support movies like this that are original, that are fun. Like I said, there are story beats that are really predictable. I mean, what do you expect? The ending, in my opinion, was really nice. It made perfect sense. The characters, their arcs came together really nicely, really smoothly, and I thought it was a cohesive story that was full circle, and 2 characters that were in a really bad place, you see growth. So yeah, check out 65 in theaters. Keep theaters alive, baby. That's all I got for you today. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Anything helps big time, and I appreciate it. Till next time, Tay out.